Yeah, good morning, everybody. Fabian, Libeau, Axonius, and we as Axonius try to tackle a new problem, an old problem, something like you've maybe seen before in your own environment. One of the topics that hasn't really evolved over the years is asset management, right? So it's been a problem forever, ever, endpoints, how to manage them and so on. And we have next generation AV, we have next generation firewall, we have next generation intrusion detection. One of the areas that wasn't tackled before is asset management. So I want to talk today about from asset management to asset intelligence, crossing the chasm. And that's, as you said, new acronym, chasm. It's that good that it has to come from Gartner, right? And it does. So Gartner coined the name chasm. And in order to describe the problem, I think this tweet really describes it well. It's coming from an incident responder from the US who did this kind of snarky tweet. It's 4 years old, but it's still up to date, right? So how many Windows hosts do we have? And whoever you ask, the answer will be different. And I mean, ask in your own organization and you will get something similar. And the problem is, as John just said, right? We came from a very homogeneous environment. You had your Windows desktops, you had your Cisco network equipment, nobody was working remote, everybody was in Active Directory or Novell NetWare, right? And you had your McAfee endpoint or Symantec, and that was about it. But then over time, you added more complexity. Macs became, all right to have at endpoints, and a lot of people now say it's the best thing ever happened to them. We added virtualization, we added more products, we added, mobile phones and so on as endpoints. We added cloud. Who's not using a cloud these days? Yeah, so you put workloads on the cloud, and it's all phenomenal. And then you added SaaS applications, especially the last 2 years during the pandemic. We added so many SaaS applications, and we don't really know what's going on. And then, all the SCADA, ICS, IoT devices showed up as well, on the internet. So that's where we are. And if you look at this slide, you will see, a lot of your products, and we all buy best of breed, right? So suite vendors, went down over the past few years. We all buy best of breed, and all these products have, they know what they're doing. You've got the best information about your vulnerabilities in your vulnerability scanner. You've got the best information about, your AV on the endpoint, EDR on the endpoint, in the endpoint product. You've got your best information here and there, but they're silos. So you can't really, correlate between them. And that's a typical problem we see at our customers and prospects, that they can't even answer very simple questions like, is my agent everywhere it should be? So let's assume your policy in your environment is that every Windows endpoint has to have CrowdStrike, right? So you just replace your McAfee with CrowdStrike, you go to your CrowdStrike admin and say, oh, are we protected? And say, oh yeah, the migration is going extremely well. So more than 95% of my endpoints now have CrowdStrike that used to run McAfee. But, if you then look into your Active Directory, is that really all the endpoints you've got, right? So now there will be a difference, yeah, for whatever reason. So you export maybe the list of your Active Directory compared against the list you get from your CrowdStrike, and you figure out that there's a gap. And then you decide, you think, okay, are really all my endpoints, Windows endpoints, registered in the Active Directory? And then you go to, and you have a look and you figure out, oh no, there are all these virtual machines that are not part of the domain because they don't have to. Or that you just spin them up, do something, and then drop them. But still, your policy is every Windows endpoint. So, you've got a bigger gap there. And then you think, oh, you know what? It's not just Windows these days. What about my Mac? And the Mac doesn't show up anywhere there. And you go into Jamf, and then you find a lot more endpoints that are not protected. So what we typically find when we're talking to customers is that it's just about 50% of the endpoint that are really protected as they should be according to their policy. And the rest, there's always a reason why it's not. So but that doesn't help to comply with your registry, with your policy. And we can spin a similar story when we talk about users, right? So your policy is every user that's accessing Salesforce has to go via Okta, right? And again, we could, now spin the story, but, just check how many users you've got in Okta that got access to Salesforce and how many users you've got in Salesforce that are able to access, and maybe it's then just a third party that's doing some administration configuration for you. It's other things. So, and all these products we're talking about, they're phenomenal for what they're doing, but we can't really collect all the data in one point. So you've got all the collectors, you've got all the data. What's needed these days is really an aggregator that takes all these different data sets, put them together, and makes sense out of that. And it's a known concept, right? So you do it with your log data. Yeah, you've got all this log data on all the different products. You consolidate them in one place and make it comparable. That's why you spend a lot of money in your SOCs for the Splunks, Curators, logarithms of this world, because you solved the problem for log data. Now it's the time to solve that problem for asset data. And in order to do that, again, I'm with Axonius, we're solving that. Our biggest competitor at the moment is, of course, Excel, right? Because that's what people are doing. They download the data in Excel spreadsheets, and then they try to put some VBA scripts or whatever on it. But a new approach is needed here, where we are talking about cyber asset attack surface management, where we turn asset data we've got all over the place into asset intelligence. So Gartner recognized that this is a market, right? So they coined a name for it, Chasm. And they mentioned it the first time last year in their network security hype cycle. As you can tell, on the hype cycle, it's at the very beginning. So it's early days for that. But Gartner, when they looked into it, for them, it was mainly about visibility. And it's about the vulnerability challenges we're facing. So again, we could spin the story and just say, OK, do I really scan with my Rapid7, Qualys, Tenable, all the assets we should scan? Or is there a gap? And Gartner says in the chasm, you really have to identify all the assets, internal and external, which makes it quite complicated. And there are products out there that do external attack surface management. And that should be integrated in one central repository inventory so we can identify the gaps and then take actions. Happy to give you a link to download the hype cycle. It's always quite interesting to understand how Gartner sees the world. And the differences between what we know as asset management, asset intelligence, they're huge, right? Asset management, I've got ITIL certified 20 years ago, right? And it was all about configuration items in your CMDB. So it was more about understanding the life cycle of hardware and software. And that's what IT is, concerned about. But asset intelligence is for everyone. And an asset these days is not just, a piece of software, a piece of hardware. It's the users as well. It is cloud, right? It's IoT. It's SaaS applications. And then some interesting stats that a lot of companies only know about 20-30% of the SaaS application they're using because it's not managed by IT security. So, asset intelligence really is about, understanding everything, getting everything together, and then, solving a lot more use cases than asset management does. The approach, as I said, for us, it's easy. You've got the data. You've got, best of breed products. We just collect it in a central inventory. We discover the gaps according to your policy, according to your use cases, and then we automate the validation and enforcement of those policies. Super happy to show you some stuff downstairs at our demo station. The deployment is easy. As I said, you already have the data. So similar to a CM solution, we just pull in the data from all over the place, make it comparable. It's completely agentless. We connect, this slide says nothing because the picture doesn't work. But we've got 350 integrations, and according to this slide, it's I think 400 something. We spit out about 5 a day, and we can do the first round of deployment in hours and get results in hours. There's a self-service on our website, so if you don't want to talk to us, just go there and do a test drive. And the use cases we can solve based on the data, there are tons of them, right? So if we just look into devices and cloud assets, one of the big topics I'm talking with customers about is called cloud migration, or the transition into the cloud. A lot of companies are spending a lot of money, but how to understand really what's where, right? What's going where. Your policy is to move everything to AWS, but you've still got tons of assets in Azure, in Google, and so on. We can do the same with users. Again, a lot of our customers are on the zero trust train, right? Try to implement zero trust in the environment. But do you really know if all the users you've got are managed by that initiative? And then SaaS application, as I said, a lot of companies struggle understanding what they have in SaaS. And especially with GDPR, this is a huge problem. Because, look at yourself, right? So you find this new, really funky SaaS app, right? And you just say, oh, yeah, integrate. Oh, yeah. Do you want to connect it to your Google account? Oh, yeah, no worries. Right? And then you've got a new application that does stuff. They describe what they're doing, but do you really read that all? And the EULA and all that? No, you just say yes because you want to solve a problem, and it does it. As an IT or as a security person in a company, you're still responsible for it, but you can't monitor it, you can't manage it. So the best way to find that out is using unmanaged, SaaS applications is fine for users, but they don't want to pay for it. So usually you find it in an expense report, where they expense the SaaS application that is just bought. So with that, I'm done with my presentation. Are there any questions in the audience?
I don't think we've got time for questions, Fabian, but they could always visit you downstairs.
No, absolutely.
Stand and talk to the team.
Yes,
I'm very grateful to that excellent presentation. A lot of people pay lip service to assets in their organization. And I think it's critical that you do an asset valuation so that you can apply the appropriate security measures to those critical assets and lesser to the cheaper assets. Very important. And this helps you in taking out insurance for your organization and knowing the value of your assets for insurance. Fabian, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Thanks, John.